Here is day one, part 3. This is the final part of day 1, which you'll leave off on section B's checkpoint. All right, so now we're in part B. Part B is simplifying square roots. It's our general gist of 6.4. But now we're going to focus on non-perfect squares and to make them simpler. So again, if you want to go back to the last video, I read what the product property of square roots was about, but we're going to use those steps in the product property of square roots to simplify the radical of 50 into lower radical form. Almost like a fraction in lowest terms, we're going to change the radical of 50 into its lowest radical form. So the first thing we have to do is come up with factors of 50, and one of those factors needs to be a perfect square. So going through this, hopefully you can see 1 times 50 is 50. I'm going to list my factors. 2 times 25 are factors. And hopefully when you see one, a perfect square, you can stop because you've noticed that 25 is one of our perfect squares in our big list of our perfect squares that's on your in your notes that you were working on. So I just found 2 factors, one of those being a perfect square that is a factor of 50. So I'm going to rewrite the radical of 50 as the radical of the factors. So I'm going to extend that radical bar because now I'm going to have 2 numbers underneath. I have 25 times 2. And I always write the perfect square first because when you take the square root of it, that's going to give you that integer out front. So that's what I want to do. I want to make sure it's out front. So I put the square root factor first and then the non-perfect square after. So then I'm going to see it as the square root of both factors. And then in that product property of square roots, it allows me to take the radical of each factor. So I'm going to break this up into the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. I broke one radical into the radical of the parts when we're multiplying. So to simplify this one more step, the radical of 25 is a perfect square. So that's going to simplify right into an integer, and that's going to be 5. But the radical of 2 has no perfect square factors that remain. So it's already in what we call lowest radical form. So I'm going to keep that as the radical of 2. And we don't need to show the multiplication sign anymore because it's implied between 5 and radical 2 that we're multiplying. So I'm going to rewrite it so it's 5 radical 2. So what did we just discover? We discovered that the radical of 50 in lowest radical form is written as 5 radical 2. So you're going to try that process within the checkpoint. Remember, you're searching for 2 factors of our radicand, and one of those factors needs to be a perfect square. Try the process, do your best, and we'll take back over tomorrow, and you can ask any questions then, and we'll review those items. You're going to work in groups as well, so you might have more questions and comments back and forth. This is your final checkpoint for day 1. Finish these, simplify, use the example, and we'll talk and discuss a little bit more tomorrow.